A Taekwondo black belt landed a precise kick on a royal guard's leg, expecting to break his stance. Instead, the guard's silent counter folded him to the ground in seconds without ever breaking formation. What happened next left the entire crowd in stunned silence. This is the incredible story of how one man's arrogance met the unshakable discipline of a royal guard. But before we dive in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Also, make sure to subscribe because tomorrow, at this very same time, we're dropping another powerful Royal Guard story that you won't want to miss. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as crowds of tourists milled about. Families snapped photos, and tour guides recited memorized facts about the palace's centuries-old history. But one man stood apart from the rest: Jason Chen. Jason's stance betrayed years of martial arts training. At 32, he was a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo, with a wall of trophies and medals back home in Seattle. He had spent nearly 2 decades mastering his craft, but lately, something gnawed at him. Tournaments and trophies no longer felt enough. He wanted to test his skills in a real-world scenario. His eyes were fixed on Sergeant Elliot Harper, a royal guard standing motionless at his post. The guard's crimson uniform was pristine under the golden sunlight, his brass buttons gleaming. His eyes were focused straight ahead, with that famous 1,000-yard stare that had fascinated visitors for generations. "He's not even blinking," Jason muttered to himself, a small smirk forming at the corner of his mouth. Jason rolled his shoulders back, feeling the familiar tension that preceded a match. He scanned the guard's posture, noting the precise angle of his shoulders, the perfect alignment of his spine, and the disciplined positioning of his feet. "They're just decorative," Jason said under his breath. "All that training just to stand there." A nearby tourist glanced at him nervously before shuffling away. Jason hardly noticed. He was already calculating distances, imagining angles of approach. The red velvet rope that separated the public from the guard stood less than 15 feet away. "Let's see how good you really are," Jason thought as he closed the distance. Jason's mind drifted to his dojang back home. His instructor, Master Park, had always taught him that Taekwondo was about discipline, respect, and self-control. But lately, those lessons had begun to feel constraining. Jason had grown tired of pulling his kicks, of following rules designed to keep everyone safe. "These palace guards, they're just for show," Jason had boasted to his sparring partners just last week. "I bet not one of them could handle a real martial artist." Now, standing just feet away from Sergeant Harper, Jason felt an opportunity to prove his point. "Impressive uniform," Jason said, his voice deliberately casual but loud enough for the guard to hear. "Must get hot standing there all day." Sergeant Harper remained motionless, his eyes fixed ahead as if Jason didn't exist. Jason's frustration grew. He leaned in slightly, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm a third-degree black belt, you know. Taekwondo, 20 years of training. I've broken boards thicker than your arm." Still, the guard showed no reaction. "We should compare notes sometime," Jason said with a thin smile. "My bet is I could take you down before you even registered what was happening." Bull. With practiced precision, Jason pivoted on his left foot, his movement fluid and controlled, his right leg chambered, knee lifting high as he prepared the strike. He aimed not for the guard's face or torso, but for his shin, painful enough to provoke a reaction but not serious enough to cause lasting damage. The kick was textbook perfect, the kind that had won him trophies in regional competitions. His foot extended with explosive force, targeting the exposed lower leg of the guard. What happened next occurred with such swift precision that many tourists would later disagree about the exact sequence of events. As Jason's kick connected, Sergeant Harper executed a pivot so economical it barely disturbed his formal posture. His right foot rotated outward exactly 45 degrees. Not a step or a stance change, just a subtle realignment that somehow transformed his entire defensive capability. Harper's pivoting leg created a perfect angle to deflect Jason's kick, channeling the force away from its target and leaving the Taekwondo practitioner momentarily off balance. Before Jason could recover, the guard's right ankle had hooked behind Jason's extended leg, capturing it mid-withdrawal, with mechanical precision. Sergeant Harper applied subtle pressure at exactly the right point on Jason's trapped leg, creating a fulcrum effect that required minimal effort but yielded maximum results. Jason's knee torqued at an angle just short of causing injury, but more than enough to command complete compliance. The pressure points activated by Harper's technique sent waves of sharp electric pain through Jason's nervous system, momentarily scrambling his brain's ability to coordinate a response. Jason's forward momentum continued despite his captured leg. His upper body pitched toward the ground as the guard maintained the perfect joint lock. His palms hit the gravel first, tiny stones embedding themselves into his skin. Then his shoulder, his cheek. The impact was controlled. Another calculation in the guard's perfect equation of response. "Stand down, sir," the guard said, his voice barely audible, meant for Jason's ears alone. It was the first and only thing Sergeant Harper would say throughout the entire encounter. As Jason lay there, trying to process what had just happened, he became acutely aware of the crowd's reaction. The gasps, the murmured exclamations, the clicks of camera shutters. Someone was already calling security, though the situation had resolved itself before it truly began. Through it all, Sergeant Harper did something that stunned Jason even more than the takedown. He resumed his position with the same mechanical precision that had characterized his defensive maneuver. The guard pivoted back to his original stance, eyes forward, expression neutral, as if nothing whatsoever had occurred. In that moment, Jason understood with crushing clarity that he had never been a test for the guard. The guard had been a test for him, a test he had catastrophically failed. The crowd erupted into a mix of gasps, whispers, and murmurs. A child pointed at Jason, asking his mother, "Why is that man on the ground?" A group of teenagers laughed nervously, one of them filming the scene on their phone. An elderly man, who had been watching from a distance, shook his head and muttered, "You don't mess with the guards, son. They're not just for show." A woman in a floral dress approached one of the security officers, her voice trembling. "Is he okay? Should we call an ambulance?" The officer shook his head. "He's fine. Just a lesson he won't forget anytime soon." Jason was helped to his feet by security personnel. He glanced back at Sergeant Harper. The guard stood as still as ever, his eyes fixed forward, his expression unreadable. For the first time in years, Jason felt a pang of humility. He had spent his entire life mastering Taekwondo, winning trophies, and earning accolades. But in less than 30 seconds, Sergeant Harper had dismantled not just his attack, but his entire set. "I didn't mean to," Jason stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. The security officer leading him away cut him off. "Save it for the police, mate." Two police officers arrived on the scene, their expressions stern as they listened to the security team's briefing. One of them approached Jason, handcuffs at the ready. "Jason Chen, you're being detained on suspicion of assault. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence." As the officer continued reading him his rights, Jason's gaze drifted back to Sergeant Harper. From this distance, the guard was just another tourist attraction, stoic, ceremonial, seemingly passive. But Jason knew better now. He understood what that stillness concealed, what that discipline contained. The police led Jason to a waiting car, and as they pulled away from the palace grounds, The last thing he saw was Sergeant Harper still at his post, still vigilant, still the perfect embodiment of duty. Some lessons, it seemed, came at a higher price than others. What do you think was going through Sergeant Harper's mind during those moments before he responded? Have you ever witnessed someone drastically underestimate a professional in their field? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this true story of when showing off goes wrong, make sure to hit that like button right now. It really helps the channel grow and ensures we can bring you more real-life encounters like this one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss our upcoming videos. Check out those videos appearing on your screen right now. We've got plenty more stories about people who challenged authorities and quickly regretted their decisions. And we'll see you again tomorrow at the same time with another brand new story.